Hello and welcome to the second episode of the Stevens Minor Family History series. I'm your host, Michael Stevens. Welcome back, since this is episode 2. This episode, I want to concentrate on my immediate family's history, my parents, myself, and my siblings. In the first episode, I talked about what genealogy, family history, family trees are, why I think they're important, why they are important, or why they're important to me. And then also I talked about my own family research journey. There was a couple subjects that I didn't get to in the first episode, so I want to catch up on those before I move into my immediate family history. So, one of the websites that was extremely helpful for me in developing our family tree is a website called Find a Grave. Now, Find a Grave is a website where people can put out memorials for their loved ones, and I've created a little over 1,000 memorials for not only my loved ones, but also on that website people do a lot of cemetery transcribing. So they'll go to a cemetery and list all the people buried there, maybe get pictures of their markers and so forth, and then they will create memorials on the website, on the Find a Grave website, for those people. I've seen some people that have 80, 100,000 or more memorials that they've created from transcribing cemeteries. I haven't done a whole lot of that, but I did do some of that. But primarily the ones I've created are my loved ones, my past generations of family. So I'll go to, let me share with you. One of the people I created a memorial for is my dad. So there's my dad's. Well, oops, that's not what I wanted. Anyway, there's his grave marker. I actually wanted to share the actual memorial itself. Let me get back to that. There we go, right there. Okay, good. That's gooder. So let me share that. Give me a moment here. There, so that's better. So there's the memorial I created for my dad. They're buried. My parents are buried at Holy Sepulchre Cemetery in Southfield, Michigan. And then, obviously the grave marker was put in, so I was able to get I took a picture of that, and I can blow that up. Let me do this here. I'm relatively new to this app that I'm using to share, so be patient with me. Anyway, so there's his marker. So on that website, so you can create memorials, and it was very helpful for me because that helped me. You can also link people, so spouses and parents with children with their parents and so forth. So that actually helped me quite a bit when I was working on a branch of the tree, and people had linked generations, so I could go back and be able to build the family tree based on what I found on the Find a Grave website. The other so in genealogy, at least for me, family history, family trees, I like to be able to close the book on each individual person's life, those that have gone on before us. So you have their birth information, and then their death information, when they died, where they died, but also their final resting place has also been very important for me. And even in my own personal life with my parents has been very important. So, like, for example, I know at the cemetery, they are not, their soul is not there, I know that, but they are physically there. And there's a physical representation of them there with their marker. But I cannot go visit my parents physically, since I'm still living in this physical world. I can't go visit them anymore at their house, or they can't come and visit us at our house. So the next best thing is I can go to the cemetery and hang out with them, and I'll bring a snack and maybe a beer or two, and sit there for a while and have a beer with my parents and talk to them or whatever. Even though I know they're not, their person is, their soul isn't there, but still, it's comforting for me that I can go there and at least see their representation. There's their names. There they are. Those are my parents. Okay? So that's why I find Find a Grave a wonderful website. So I've used that quite a bit. The other thing was I talked about some of the more distant relatives that either we knew about or heard of or whatever, but we didn't actually know them growing up, that I reached out. It's like my parent, either my mom or my dad's, their cousins. Some of my aunts were still alive back when I started really in earnest working on the family tree back in 2011 after our mom was gone. So I talked about some of those people. One of the persons that I didn't get to was that I met 4 or 5 years later, like maybe 2015 or so, 2016 maybe. His name is Kurt Brainard. This is a first cousin to our mom, and so our grandfather had 3 sisters. Now the interesting thing was that Virginia, his youngest sister, we knew about her. I remember the name, but his other 2 sisters, there was a Mildred and Evelyn. I never heard about them until after my mom was gone. I started working on the family tree. Anyway, our grandpa's sister Evelyn, Kurt is her son. Sorry, that's Evelyn's son. And come to find out, I was able to contact him. We got together, shared. I worked on his family tree. I actually worked on his wife Sue's family tree, but they lived within a mile of where my mom lived in Northville, and never knew it. Maybe they never knew each other. I'm guessing they never knew each other, but they lived within a mile of each other and never knew it. So it was nice meeting him. And we also met Evelyn's granddaughter from her first marriage. So her first husband died relatively young, and then she married a second time to Brainard, Kurt's father. And then I also met Mildred, who is Evelyn's granddaughter from her first marriage. So that was 2015, 2016. So that was another person that we shared information with, talked about the family and so forth. So that was one of the other people I reached out to in my family research journey. So getting to mom and dad, my parents. So I will bring up the picture again of my siblings, of the family. So this picture I'm going to share was taken at our parents' 50th wedding anniversary. As you can see, it says 50. I'll reintroduce everybody yet again. So on the front left, that's my oldest brother Tom. Oh, let me back up a second. Mom and dad, so we have 11 children. They have 44 grandchildren. And there are soon to be, later this month, 42 great-grandchildren. So they've been responsible for 97 souls being brought into the world. So in the front left, that's my brother Tom. Now he has 2 boys and 3 grandchildren. Susan, next oldest, she has 4 children and 9 grandchildren. And our dad. This is my sister Jeannie. Jeannie has 2 daughters and 7 grandchildren. Here at the end is Carol. Carol has 4 children and 5 grandchildren. Up here in the back, left in the back, Anne-Marie. Anne-Marie has 4 children and also 7 grandchildren. Then my brother Jim. Jim has 3 children and 2 grandchildren so far. And then that's me in the blue shirt. I have 3 children, no grandchildren. Bob, 2 years younger than me. He has 3 children and 3 grandchildren. Then there's our sister Kathy. Kathy did our parents one better. Kathy has 12 children, and she's the one that's expecting another grandchild later this month, and that will be her 5th grandchild. And then there's Paul. Paul has 4 children, no grandchildren yet. And Mark has 3 children and no grandchildren yet. So there is a reintroduction of the family. So getting to my parents, so they met. Our dad was in the war. He was over in the Pacific Theater with the Army Corps of Engineers stationed on Guam. Was discharged in February of 1946. So here's a picture of my parents with their lifelong friends, the Sherbs. Let me get me out of there so I can expand that picture. So this is my dad's on the far right, and then our mom is the next one on the right. Right here. And then this is Mary Ann Gaffney, is her maiden name. And then Walter Sherub here. Now, understanding how they met, it was a double date with these four people. And on the double date, Dad was paired up with Mary Ann, and Mom was paired up with Walter. And the story goes that sometime after that, or not long after that, Dad contacted Walter and asked Walter if he minded if he asked Marcella to go out, and Walter's like, sure. Didn't have a problem with it, and so the rest is history. Walter and Mary Ann were married 3 months to the day before our parents, back in 1948. And I will bring up a picture of again of their wedding day. It's the bridal party from our parents' wedding in April of 1948. Okay, there it is. I'll expand that so you can see that better. So this is the bridal party. Obviously, our parents in the middle. On the far left, and let me go to the picture itself so I can scroll over people. On the far left, that's Bill Schriefer. That's our dad's first cousin. He came up from Erie, Pennsylvania. Our dad's family's from Erie, Pennsylvania. And then next is Joanne Wheeler. Was her married name? I think her maiden name might have been Smith, or I forget her maiden name, but that's Joanne Wheeler. Then the next is Phil Stewart. Now, Phil Stewart was our dad's best man, and they knew each other in the service. And actually, when Phil Stewart entered the Catholic Church, our dad was his sponsor into the church. Then next to him is that's our Aunt Virginia. That's our mom's sister. Then our dad, our mom, and this is a family friend, Howard Cargill. Next to Howard is our Aunt Dorothy. That's our dad's sister. Next we have is our Uncle Don. That's our mom's brother, Uncle Don. And then on the far right is Mary Ann. At this time, sure, because they were married by this time. So let's see. What do I want? So I'll leave that up for now, so you can see that. Actually, I didn't leave it up. Anyway, so back to me. So this whole thing, again, this whole thing started back in April of 1948 when our parents got married. So now a little bit. So my understanding was that when they first got married, they moved in with our Aunt Dorothy, who was not married at the time, with our Aunt Dorothy and Grandma, our dad's mother. So the four of them. Then Tom came. Susan came. Now in 1952, Jeannie came. Jeannie was born. And there's pictures from Jeannie's baptism day, but they're on the porch of our parents' home, their own home, which was on Asbury Park, because our grandma and our Aunt Dorothy were living on Sorrento in Detroit. Anyway, this was at their home on Asbury Park. And interesting thing, the street address was 11351 Asbury Park, and some years later, it's just south of Plymouth Road, some years later, my sister Anne Marie was living at 11351 Seminole. So it was the same house number and same distance below Plymouth Road. So they moved into Asbury Park sometime before Jeannie was born. And then in 1955, we moved to the house. My parents moved to the house where I grew up. Most of us grew up, 17330 Braille. they moved into that just before or just after my sister Anne Marie was born. I forget. But so they lived there for 22 years. Moved out of there in 1977. Moved to Northville at that time. And then my mom ended up living there almost 30 years. She moved out of the house on 45015 Mayo Drive in Northville sometime in 2006 or 2007. So she was there almost 30 years. Okay. So let me make sure I got my notes here. Let's see. So I talked about, okay. So my siblings, I already introduced those. Okay, and then where my parents lived. So I'll start with my first thing I want to say about my parents. I am eternally grateful to them for raising us in the Catholic Church. We made our sacraments, baptism, confession, First Communion, confirmation. They gave us that firm foundation in the faith because for me, in my 20s, it became, unfortunately for me, it wasn't a priority, practicing my faith through my 20s. And then I had a reversion, and I have 3 people to thank for that. My sister Kathy, first of all, for my reversion back to a full practice of the Catholic faith. And then Mark Anders, he was a co-worker of mine at Ford Motor Company. He would invite me to these, what's called an evening of recollection, that were put on by a Catholic organization called Opus Dei. Opus Dei is Latin for work of God. So he would invite me, and initially I was like, well, I don't know, I'm not really into that stuff. But eventually I did go, and I'm glad I did. And then the first time at the evening of recollection, I bought a book called The Faith Explained, which I had, most all of us have gone to at least a number of years of Catholic schools. I went 11 years to Catholic schools because we moved to Northville just after my senior year in high school. But I'm reading this book, The Faith Explained, and I was like, I don't remember being taught this stuff or forgot it or whatever. And then also that first evening of recollection was a Father Farrell. I don't remember his first name, but it was Father Farrell. He was actually an Opus Dei priest that came up from Notre Dame to conduct these evenings of recollection. But he just impressed me in that those 3 people are the ones that inspired me to have a reversion back to the full practice of my Catholic faith. And yet, if my parents had not developed or created that firm foundation of the faith for us growing up, it may not have lasted or may not have taken hold. But so I'm grateful to those 3 people, and I'm eternally grateful to Mom and Dad for raising us in the Catholic faith. Now, our dad most definitely was, I'm just looking at my notes here, our dad most definitely was the disciplinarian in the family. My recollection, he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid to spank. He wasn't afraid. He used the belt. None of us are, as far as I know, are emotionally damaged because of that. But he would use it. And our mom was, we would plead with her if we did something wrong. We got ourselves in trouble with our mom. We would plead with her. Don't tell Dad. But she always did. She always told him, and we'd get what for when wait. She was the wait till your father gets home type, and never failed to tell Dad what happened. There was one instance that I recall that I used a off-color word. I won't utter that here since this is a family show, but I did get my mouth washed out with soap, and ivory soap, that bright white stuff that kind of blends in with your teeth, so you really can't see it, and every time you drink water or whatever, then the lovely taste comes back up again. But anyway, Dad was most definitely the disciplinarian. We did all the things that kids did. We played Little League. I played Little League baseball for 2 years. I was in the Cub Scouts. I was in the Boy Scouts. I remember, I think it was when I was in the Cub Scouts, there was a baseball team, and we'd play other Cub packs or other Boy Scout troops or something. my recollection is that my dad was the coach. He may or may not have been, but I do remember that because so for kindergarten, I went to Holcomb, which was a public school nearby. And interesting thing is here I'm going to kindergarten in the mid '60s, and I'm walking to school and back. I'm like 5 years old, and I'm walking to school and back. Yeah, it seemed like forever, but when I went back and drove the distance between my parents' house and Holcomb, it was like a half mile. Anyway. But anyway, get back to the Cub Scout, Boy Scout baseball team. We played some of our games, at the playground at Holcomb School. Because I remember the parking lot, the playground was like this very fine, like gravel, extremely fine, almost like not sand, but it was extremely fine gravel, and you'd have that on your shoes and everything when you came home. And I remember that because one game we played, I don't know if it was a doubleheader or something, but it kind of went kind of late. It started getting dusky, and a fly ball was hit out to the outfield, and the kid couldn't see it, and he missed it, and it hit his. I remember it hit him in the face, and it was, bloody nose and stuff. And then at the end of the season, we were in the playoffs, and I guess if I recall correctly, the championship game. Our best player was off on vacation with his family, and we lost. We ended up losing. We didn't win the championship, but some of the other things we did was we went to CYO camp, Catholic Youth Organization. We went to CYO camp 4 years. I went 4 years. Almost all of us went. I mean, from like Tom on down to Bob, like the first 8 of us. I don't think Kathy or Paul and Mark ever went, but we went to CYO camp. I went 3 years, because I was in cabin. There were different cabin numbers. I was in cabin 9, 6, and 4 were the 3 cabins I remember being in. And Bob went the same years I went, my younger brother Bob. So I went to CYO camp, which was fun. And on one occasion, our dad took the rest of the family on a camping trip while we were at CYO camp, and it sounded like quite a fun trip. So I was kind of disappointed that we missed that trip, but we were at CYO. Some of the reminiscences of CYO camp. I mean, they would get us up first thing in the morning, like reveille, just after it got light out, and we'd have to go swimming in Lake St. Clair. It's freezing. That's not one of my favorite memories of CYO camp. But then I remember after dinner we had like a free time where there was a creek that ran through the camps north of Port Huron, between Port Huron and Port Sanilac along Lake St. Clair, and we'd have free time. There was a store where you could, after dinner time, you could buy candy, and mom and dad would always give us a little bit of change to be able to get some candy. So CYO camp was kind of when we were little, was kind of a regular thing for us. The first year we went, our cousin Ralph, which is our mom's brother Ralph's son, he went with us. He wasn't in the same cabin as Bob and I, but he went with us. That was fun, hanging out with our cousin Ralph. We also, and again, I mentioned about Dad taking the family on camping trips. Camping trip while we were at CYO. Well, Dad took us on camping trips almost every year. We did go on camping trips almost every year. I would say from, I don't know, like the time I was, a couple years old. Most of the trips our mom didn't go because there was, a baby or a toddler at home. She did go on a few trips. As a matter of fact, the trip that the family went on when I was at CYO camp, Mom did go on that trip. On the trips that she didn't go, our dad was a ham radio operator. His call letters were WA8SIV, and he would word it out by saying William Abel 8 Sugar Ida Victor. So he could anyway. So he would contact another ham radio operator in the Detroit area, and then somehow or other the person in the Detroit area could call our mom through some kind of a audio patch or something, and we could talk to her through Dad's ham radio while we were off on a camping trip. But the camping trips were one of 2 of my favorite, most memories of childhood. That and Christmas morning. But our dad, the camping trips, years later, our dad kind of revealed that he didn't particularly enjoy it because it was a lot of work for him, but he did it for us. That's the kind of dad he was. I mean, our parents, again, I'm eternally grateful for them raising us in the faith, but they, to the best of their ability, they provided for us, took care of us, loved us. We, again, got involved in all the things that kids do, and I'm eternally grateful for them for all that as well. And then Christmas morning. So at our house on Braille, so all the rooms were like lined up with each other, like living room, dining room, kitchen, and then about 1970, add an addition to the back end of the house. So there were 4 rooms all right in a row with each other. So the living room was kind of like by itself. It was like front by itself. So what mom and dad would do, excuse me, what mom and dad would do is there was an archway, big archway between the living room and the dining room. They would put a sheet to cover the archway so that we could not see into the living room and not be able to see what Santa brought us for Christmas. And so we'd go to Christmas Mass, like early in the morning. I remember going before it was dark. It was still dark. And then we'd come home, and then we'd go in the back door so we couldn't go through the front door into the living room. And then we would wait anxiously for mom and dad or the older siblings to drop the sheet, and then we could go in and see what we got for Christmas. So those are the camping trips and Christmas mornings are 2 of my fondest memories of my childhood. One, so in, let me see. So as I said, I went to Holcomb for grade school. I went to Christ the King Catholic School for first grade through 8th grade. So I was there 8 years. Then I moved to St. Agatha High School. We went there for 3 years. As I mentioned, we moved out to Northville from Detroit after my senior year in high school. And my dad worked for a company called Sperry Vickers in Troy. Remember, it was at 14 Mile Road and Crooks in Troy. And he said, well, you can still go to St. Agatha, and I'll take you to school, and then I'll go to work after that. I'm like, no, he'd have to drive from Northville all the way down to Detroit or Redford, and then all the way out to Troy, which is way northwest of where we lived. I'm like, no, I'll just go to Northville High School, so I graduated from Northville High School in 1978. One of the other long-running common things in our family is golf. So sometime in the early 70s, 1970, 71, our parents took up the game of golf. And to this day, 6 of us still play golf. So the 4 youngest boys, so myself, my brother Bob, who is a pro, he's at a club outside of Dayton, Ohio. And then Paul and Mark, we still play golf regularly. And 2 of my sisters, Jeannie and Susan, also play golf and have for a number of years now. So that was kind of a constant throughout all the years, starting around 1970. My brother Jim and Jim started first. We started caddying at Plum Hollow Golf Club, which is in Southfield, Michigan, 9 Mile and Lasher. He started caddying there. Then I caddied there. That also Bob caddied there for 1 or 2. We moved out, and youngest boys, Paul and Mark, they also caddied at I want to say Meadowbrook Golf Course in Northville. So golf's kind of been a constant in the family for over 50 years now. So wanted to get into talking a little bit about the extended family. So let me go back about some unique things about our mom and dad. So Dad was I don't want to say a wannabe poet, but he was starving poet or whatever. Anyway, so when he would buy anniversary cards for their anniversary and give to our mom, he would write a little poem that rhymed with the number of years they'd been married. And I remember when our mom moved out of the house in Northville, which she lived at almost 30 years, she was just going to throw them out. And fortunately, my sister Anne Marie was there, and she's like, no, don't throw them out. Those are great. Keep them. Don't throw them out. I'll keep them. So Anne Marie kept some. I have some. So he would write a poem to her every year on their anniversary, maybe on her birthday or Mother's Day as well, but primarily their anniversary. And there was one that I have that our mom wrote to our dad, which was probably, it wasn't something that we kids were supposed to see. It was somewhat saucy, if you will, about their relationship. So that's all I'll say about that. But I was like, whoa, Mom, that's pretty interesting. So that was one thing about our dad. He would write her poems. Our mom she never worked. She was a stay-at-home mom, always there for us, always with breakfast, lunch, dinner, always there. Our dad was, I would say our dad was maybe a little more sentimental than our mom. I can remember a couple instances on Father's Day, him kind of choking up. I remember one time Kathy, my sister Kathy, read something about fathers out of the church bulletin or something, and you could tell he was kind of choking up by that. And then I played for him some other time. I played for him the song by Dan Fogelberg, leader of the band, and he kind of liked that. Music was also, mentioning that, music was also big around our house. Our dad was he didn't like singing. He liked music, he liked the beat and things like that, but he wasn't a big fan of singing. Although they did have, Frank Sinatra, Ray Conniff. Ray Conniff didn't always sing. There were some songs that people sang, but Ray Conniff and Al Hurt was another. Percy Faith was another artist I remember. Herb Alpert, Sergio Mendes. These were some of the artists that I remember hearing growing up. And I remember there was one Christmas, I don't know, I was 5 or 6 or 7 years old, but Christmas Eve, I was not feeling well, and I was laying on the couch in the living room, and our stereo cabinet, which I still have the stereo cabinet out in my garage. It's 60 plus years old or something, I don't know, but I still have it. But anyway, so that was the record was played. Our parents were playing the Frank Sinatra record, Strangers in the Night. So I remember that music from at night. I was laying on the couch not feeling well on Christmas Eve. So music has always been a constant. I later had a DJ business for 12 years or so. I've always liked music. I thank my mom too for kind of getting me into classic movies and some of the trivia about it, because when I was going to Schoolcraft College, I had classes in the morning, and then I went to work for my went to work for my uncle in the evening or mid-afternoon or something. Well, I would go home on those weekdays after school, and Mom and I would watch Bill Kennedy. He broadcast here in the Detroit area, and he'd play a movie, and then he'd have kind of an intermission where there'd be trivia and things like that. I mean, that's where I first learned that Shirley MacLaine and Warren Beatty are brother and sister. Maybe you didn't know that. And that Olivia de Havilland and Joan Fontaine are sisters. Just things like that. So that, I've kind of been a movie buff ever since, and always been a big music fan. So my older sisters, I remember the records they had when I started really listening to music. They had, of course, the Beatles. I'll get to that in a minute. The Beatles concert when they were here in Detroit. So the Beatles, they had the Rolling Stones, CCR record, mostly the Beatles. There were some others I can't remember right now offhand what they were. But okay, so the Beatles played at Olympia Stadium where the Red Wings played hockey. They played twice. They were here twice, once in 1964 and once in 1966. And there was a Sunday show. They had a 2 o'clock show, afternoon show, and then a 7 o'clock in the evening show. So they had 2 shows each of those days. My siblings, the older siblings, Tom on down to Amory, so the first 5 children, went to the concert. And I'm pretty sure it was the 1964 concert. I was able to find a replica of the ticket from the concert, and it was $3. So the Beatles, one of the, if not the greatest band of all time, rock and roll band of all time, although the Stones call themselves that, but I'll say the Beatles, and a lot of people would as well. $3 for a ticket. Now I was going to figure out, how much in 2021 dollars is $3 in 1964. How much was $3 in 1964? But I didn't do that. But still, my wife and I saw Fleetwood Mac and the Eagles a couple years ago, and the tickets were $155, $160 each. So you can see it's gone up quite a bit. So that's one thing that the family did. Oh, about that concert. The story goes that the tickets somehow or other got lost. The tickets were lost, and our dad drove the kids down to the show, and basically, I don't know if he pleaded or whatever, but said that the tickets got lost, and they let him in. I highly doubt nowadays, with tickets $155 or more, that they would, you lost your ticket? Come on in. Anyway, that's the story. So now I'd like to get to our extended family. So our dad's siblings, our cousins, so forth. So I'll start with my mom's family. Well, I'll start with my dad's family. So let me pull up a picture for you here So my dad is the youngest of 3. So let me pull that up here. Here we go. So there is Dad with his siblings. So the oldest was Uncle Charles on the left. This picture was taken when we had a surprise 70th birthday party for our dad. So that's Uncle Charles on the far left, and then our Aunt Dorothy. So Charles, Dorothy. And Dorothy was very much so in our lives. For me, I would say that, her and her husband Dean. Let me bring it. I think I have a picture of Dean and Dorothy. Dean and Dorothy were like second parents to us. They, had us come. Our Uncle Dean had us come work out in his shop. He owned a manufacturing shop in Pinckney, Michigan. He would have us come out, work out there, work in the shop, cleaning up. We'd go out. We'd spend a week or so and mow the lawn, because when they moved, they lived on Glenmore in Detroit, right next to Glenhurst Golf Course. And then in 1974, they had a house built in Pinckney, and our Aunt Dorothy got to name the street. It's still called Green Acres. So he bought the house in 1974. Anyway, they would have us come out. He bought, I think he had 10 acres. They had 10 acres. They had a pond put some fish in. We'd come fishing, but he always wanted us to throw them back. But anyway, but they were always around for Christmas. We'd see them on Christmas. They had a couple Christmas parties. I remember one Christmas party. Their basement was actually kind of cool when they were still living on Glenmore in Detroit. They had a Christmas party. I remember their basement was wood paneling, which we didn't have that at our house. So I thought it just looked kind of neat. I just kind of remember that. But they always had pops for us. We would go over and mow their lawn when they lived in Detroit as well. And we could drink pop and all the pop we wanted and so forth. So they were, they gave us gifts and whatever. They were just like very much in our lives, and they were like I said, like second parents. After they moved to Pinckney, they started spending their winters down in Florida, and so what they would do is that they would have one of us kids drive them down to Florida, because they usually went and stayed down, and they did stay down in the Sarasota, Bradenton area. But we would drive them down, and then they would fly us back. And then same thing, and then just the opposite in the spring, they would fly one of us down, and we would drive them back home. And I did that the last 2 years that Dean was alive. He died in August of 1982. So 1981, 82, I flew down and drove them back home from Florida. The story goes that, so Dean is actually in one of the pictures at our parents' wedding. So they obviously had met at that time, but so the story goes that when Jeannie was born, this is June of 1952, when Jeannie was born, Mom was all happy, had her baby and so forth, and she's, our dad and our grandma, our dad's mother, come to the hospital all, dragging in sour face or whatever, because Dorothy ran off with this guy, Dean Stout. Well, so that's when they got married civilly. They did go through, I'm not sure why. My understanding was either Dean or his first wife, one of the two of them was not baptized, so they weren't technically married in the church. But I believe they went through some kind of annulment process, and some years later, Dean was baptized or whatever, and entered the church, and they had a church wedding in 1968, because there's a picture of us on the steps of the church after their church wedding. So they were a constant in our lives. There was, I think, the night, so my oldest brother Tom went into the Navy, and we had parents had like a going away party for him, and aunts, uncles, cousins came over, and if it's that night or if it was that night or not, I'm not sure, but we had a pool, always had a pool in the backyard, and anyway, that night or one other night we were having a party, the pool, it busted open, and myself and my brother Bob were in the pool, and we call our Uncle Dean. So in the backyard, the garage was separate from the house. There was a garage, and then it kind of sloped down. The yard sloped down away from the garage, but he down towards where the pool was. Well, he apparently was running down to find us or save, rescue us or whatever, and he slipped and fell or whatever. But so I do remember that the pool busting open. On our mom's side, so yeah, Dean and Dorothy, very grateful, very wonderful people, and was very happy to have them in our lives. Our mom's side of the family, so she's the oldest of 5. Let me get that there. There we are. So she's the oldest of 5. So this picture was taken. This was the last. This is the last known picture that I know of all of them together. Unfortunately, our mom's looking sideways. But anyway, this was somewhere in the year 2000. So far left is on the far right is our mom in the pink shirt, and then next to her is Uncle Ralph. Uncle Ralph is still with us. Let me find the picture so I can scroll them. Okay, so Mom, Uncle Ralph is still with us. He just turned. His birthday's the day before mine. My birthday's September 15. His birthday's September 14. He just turned 88. There's our Uncle Howard. He was the baby. Our Uncle Don. He was the second oldest, and then our Aunt Virginia on the far family in the year, her and her siblings in the year 2000. I mostly remember Uncle Ralph growing up. Our Uncle Howard and his wife Jerry, they had 3 daughters, Karen, Julie, and Linda. They lived further away, so we didn't see them quite as often. Uncle Ralph worked his whole career at Ford Motor Company, but their children, so Ralph Jr. and then Lynn, our cousin, and then David and Paul. Now Ralph, Lynn, and David were all around like me and Bob and my sister Kathy and Paul's age. So we spent a lot of time with them. And one of the things I remember about our cousin Ralph, he was we were baseball. We collected baseball cards. That was another constant in growing up, was baseball cards and Matchbox cars and Hot Wheels and those types of things. But I remember when we were at the height of our baseball collecting career as kids or whatever, he only wanted Detroit Tigers. So he was willing to trade big name Hall of Fame players for any Detroit player. And I remember a Detroit ball player named Ken Zakowitz. He might have played a year or two. I had Ken Zakowitz, and he wanted it, and I don't know, I forget if he traded Hank Aaron for it or something, but Ralph wanted Detroit Tiger players, so I made the trade. That's what he wanted, so I made the trade. So I do remember going over to Uncle Don and Millie, so his wife was Millie, Don and Millie's house for Christmas. They had a big pane glass window in front of the house. The Christmas tree was always right in the front window there. And then our Uncle Ralph and his wife Alice, my Aunt Alice, they are my godparents. Ralph and Alice are my godparents. Howard's first wife was Aunt Jerry, and then Virginia. Interesting. So their last name is Minor, and my Aunt Virginia married a minor, but instead of Miner, Uncle Jack's name is Minar, so she's still a minor. So just briefly getting back to Dean and Dorothy. Dean, from his first marriage, had 3 granddaughters: Angela, Sonia, and Kelly. So that's his daughter Linda's 3 daughters. And I don't know so much about Jim, but Bob and I, they were around our age. Like Angela was maybe like 6 months older than me. Sonia was like Bob's age, and then Kelly, the youngest, was like our sister Kathy's age. Well, they were all very pretty, and we were quite taken by them. As a matter of fact, when Dean and Dorothy had their 25th wedding anniversary party, they came into town for that, and Bob and I, at least anyways, we were like, I just remember we like danced with them all night, and then the next day we spent hours in the yard hitting plastic golf balls around the yard and talking about which one we were going to marry, which of the 3 we're going to marry, so that kind of sticks in my mind. So that kind of takes me up to today. Well, not today. Kind of give you a little background of our family history, our parents, and so forth. Now, one thing too about my Aunt Dorothy. So I was the oldest age-wise, also the last, but I was the oldest age-wise to get married, and let me share a picture of my family. So my wife and our children. I'll get to the story in a second. I'm going to get this picture open. I'll get to the story about Dorothy. So Dorothy, so here we are. So this is, obviously it's me. That's our daughter Elizabeth. It's my wife Rebecca. And then it's her daughter Kate and her son Chris. So it's a blended family. But Dorothy, seeing that I was, way beyond married, I was almost 35 when I got married. And Dorothy had told my mom, whatever, that she was praying to St. Jude, who was the patron saint of hopeless cases, that I would find a good woman to marry, and I did. And we've been married 26 years now. So her prayers were answered, And maybe she put in a good word or two in for me after she was gone, after my Aunt Dorothy was gone. So I had met Becky before Dorothy died. She died in November of 1993. I had met Becky in 1991, but they never met. But and I don't even know for sure if Dorothy even knew that I was dating somebody. Maybe not. Maybe not. I'm not sure. Let me see. Okay, let's get that up. Keep my family up there. So that kind of covers my story. Now, my plans for this episode 2 is actually going to be an extended episode 2 because my plan is to interview, if they're willing to, each of my siblings and get their stories, their perspective on things, what they remember of mom and dad and of their childhood and so forth. So it could stretch into quite a long episode, 11 episodes of the second episode or whatever, 11 takes on the second episode. So we'll see. The first interview I will be having is this coming Sunday with my brother Bob. He's not quite 2 years younger than me. So that'll be the first sibling interview of the other 10. If the other 9 want to do it, I look forward to talking with all of them about their remembrances of mom and dad and growing up and etc. So with that, thank you for joining me. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to seeing you in the future with more episodes. So God bless, and God bless America.